The alarm sounds at 0545 station time, as it has for 7 months. He wakes in the dark, hand already reaching to silence it before the second chime. His quarters are small, 3 meters by 4, walls the color of old bone, a narrow bunk bolted to the floor. The air tastes recycled metallic. He lies still for 30 seconds, counting his breaths the way he has since the academy, then rises. His name is Daniel Kerr, systems engineer, human, 34 standard years. The biographical details feel like facts about someone else. The shower rations him 90 seconds of water. He stands under the spray with his eyes closed, feeling the pressure change as the recyclers strain to maintain flow. Everything on the vessel strains now. The Valorian captain's death broke more than the jump drive. It fractured the crew's ability to believe rescue would come at all. 7 months. The resource war grinding through coalition space makes every parsec of fuel precious. They are low priority, scientific mission, no strategic value. They know this. He dresses in the same grey worksuit he wears every day, checks the comm display mounted beside his door. Overnight alerts, minor pressure fluctuation in hydroponics bay 3, temperature spike in the observation deck's climate control, a request from Seth for assistance in the biology lab. He archives the first 2, already on his daily checklist. The third he leaves marked unread. The corridors are empty at this hour. Most of the crew sleeps through the vessel's arbitrary night cycle, their bodies surrendering to whatever biological protocols their species evolved for crisis. He walks the habitation ring alone, boots silent on metal floors, feeling the constant vibration of the stabilizers fighting the binary star's gravitational chaos. The ship groans. It always groans now. Hydroponics first. He keys open the bay and steps into humid warmth, the smell of growing things almost offensive after the sterile corridors. The pods stretch in rows under full-spectrum lights, algae tanks bubbling, vertical gardens climbing the walls. This is what keeps them alive. His work, his maintenance, his refusal to let a single system fail. He moves between the rows, checking readouts, adjusting nutrient feeds, his hands performing tasks muscle memory has automated. A tomato plant in pod 7 shows signs of blight. He isolates it, makes notes, continues. 2 hours pass. He does not notice. At 800 he eats in the commissary, a ration bar and synthesized coffee that tastes like it was made from the same algae he just finished tending. He sits at a corner table, back to the wall, watching the crew filter in. The Threnodi move with that strange hesitance now, their segmented bodies jerking between decisions their separate neural centers cannot agree on. One of them, the engineer named Velis, stands in the doorway for a full minute before entering, her carapace segments visibly misaligned. She does not look at him. The 2 Calith, Mirren and Tollus sit together at the far table, barely eating. Their large eyes track movement, with an intensity that suggests they are processing far more than visual data. Empaths, he remembers, from the briefing files he read before this mission began, a lifetime ago. They feel what others feel, their nervous systems open channels most species sealed shut millennia back. The collective grief aboard this vessel must be crushing them. Sesith enters last. Her translucent carapace catches the overhead lights, revealing the slow pulse of organs within, the delicate machinery of an alien biology he has studied but never truly understood. She carries her meal tray with precise movements, each manipulator appendage coordinated in ways that suggest her segments at least still communicate. She does not sit near him. She does not need to. He feels her attention like heat against his skin. He finishes his coffee and leaves. The water reclamation system occupies the lowest level of the habitation ring, a maze of pipes and filtration tanks where condensation drips constantly and the temperature hovers 10 degrees above comfortable. He descends the maintenance shaft, toolkit mag-locked to his belt, headlamp cutting through the dimness. The diagnostic ran overnight flagged stress fractures in the primary circulation loop. Hairline breaks. Where metal fatigues under pressure, it was never designed to sustain for this long. He finds the first fracture behind tank 7, a seam where 2 pipes join, the weld showing signs of crystallization. Water seeps not much, just enough to mark failure's approach. He sets up his mobile welder, adjusts the arc, begins the slow work of sealing the break. Sweat runs down his back. His hands remain steady. Velis was supposed to assist with this. The duty rotation assigns engineering tasks to both of them, a redundancy protocol that assumes 2 heads work better than 1. But Velis has not left her quarters in 3 days. Her segments, according to the medical reports Crystalis copies him on, refuse to synchronize. She is technically one being experiencing what amounts to a 14-way argument about whether continuing to function serves any survival purpose. Threnody fragmentation, the report names it. Terminal if it persists, he works alone. He has always worked alone even when others stood beside him. The second fracture runs longer, nearly 8 centimeters, deep enough that he has to cut away damaged metal before rewelding. The work requires him to wedge himself between pipes, his body bent at angles that will leave him sore tomorrow. The heat is immense. His suit's cooling system struggles. He breathes through his mouth, tastes metal and recycled water, keeps welding. 3 hours. The fractures are sealed. He runs a pressure test, watches the gauges hold steady, makes his notes. The system will hold another month, maybe 2. By then, rescue will have come, or they will have bigger problems than leaking pipes. He climbs back to the habitation ring, strips out of his suit in the locker room, stands under the shower's 90-second ration with his eyes closed. His shoulders ache. His hands shake slightly. Exhaustion, dehydration, the cost of working in heat that should have required 2 people in shifts. He counts his breaths. 30. The shaking stops. The mess hall serves dinner at 1800. He eats alone again. The same ration bar, the same terrible coffee. Across the room, Sesith watches him. She has been watching for weeks now. Her attention no longer something he can pretend not to notice. When he stands to leave, she stands too. And he knows she will ask again for his presence in the biology lab, and he knows he will eventually stop finding reasons to refuse. The biology lab occupies a corner of the research wing, all clean surfaces and specimen storage. The air kept cooler than the rest of the vessel to preserve samples collected before the accident destroyed their ability to collect more. Sesith works here during night cycle, alone cataloguing data that no longer serves any purpose except to give her hands something to do. She requested his assistance 3 times before he agreed to come. He finds her at the analysis station, manipulators moving across holographic displays with precision that seems impossible, given how the other Threnody have deteriorated. She does not look up when he enters. "The temperature control," she says. Voice-carrying harmonics the translator renders flat, but that resonates somewhere in his chest. "It fluctuates. The specimens require stability." He crosses to the environmental panel, pulls up the diagnostic. The readings show normal variance, nothing that would threaten preservation. He adjusts the tolerance margins anyway, tightening the acceptable range, giving her what she asked for, even though they both know that is not why she called him here. "Better?" he asks. "Yes, thank you." She still has not looked at him. He should leave. The work is done. But he finds himself standing there, watching her work, aware of how small the lab is, how close they are despite the meters between them. The specimens in their containment fields glow faintly, bioluminescent organisms from the 4th planet, now a cinder orbiting the dying stars. Everything they studied here is gone. They catalogue ghosts. "Daniel." His name in her voice sounds strange, the translator struggling with human phonetics. "May I ask something?" "Sure. How do you continue?" The question is not what he expected. He turns to face her fully. She has finally looked up, her large eyes reflecting the specimen lights, her carapace rising and falling with breaths that seem too rapid. "Continue what?" "Everything. Maintenance. Routine. You do not stop. Your species does not fragment." He considers lying, offering some platitude about human resilience, but her eyes hold his with an intensity that demands honesty. "We stop," he says. "Eventually. We just don't have a protocol for it, no biological off-switch. We keep going until we can't." "That sounds exhausting." "It is." She moves then, crossing the space between them, with that fluid grace the other Threnody have lost. She stops close enough that he can feel the heat radiating from her body. Threnody run hot, he remembers, their metabolism faster than human baseline. Her manipulator rises, hesitates, then touches his forearm. The contact is light, almost questioning. Her fingers spread to feel the muscle beneath his sleeve, the warmth of his skin through thin fabric. "You are always warm," she says, and there is something in her voice the translator cannot render, some harmonic that bypasses language entirely. Constant. Your temperature does not fluctuate. Your rhythm does not change. He does not pull away. The touch carries weight beyond the physical. Observation, yes, but also need, a kind of hunger he recognizes but cannot name. Her fingers press slightly, feeling his pulse, and he realizes she is not studying him the way a xenobiologist studies a specimen. This is something else. "Sessith, we have been watching," she says, interrupting, "all of us, trying to understand what you are made of, why you do not break." The confession should disturb him, it does not. Instead, he feels seen in a way he has not been in years, maybe ever. Seen not for what he does, but for what he is, even if neither of them can articulate what that means. Her touch slides to his wrist, fingers encircling, feeling the steady pulse there. "I need to know," she says, voice barely above a whisper, harmonics resonating against his ribs. "What it costs you." He has no answer. The cost is invisible, accumulated in the space between heartbeats, in the tension his shoulders carry, in the dreams he does not remember when he wakes. He stands there, alien fingers around his wrist, and realizes he has forgotten how to be touched without purpose, without function, without the excuse of work. "I don't know," he says finally, and it is the most honest thing he has said in 7 months. She does not release his wrist. Her thumb finds his pulse point, rests there, absorbing the rhythm. They stand like that for a long time, the lab's recycled air moving around them, the specimens glowing their quiet deaths, until he finally, gently, pulls away. The Caliph approach him formally, following protocols he does not understand, but respects, because they clearly matter. Myron speaks while Tola stands half a step behind, their positioning deliberate, ritual. They find him in the engineering bay, mid-shift, elbow deep in a coolant pump that decided to develop a rhythmic knock like a failing heart. "Daniel Kerr," Myron says, their voice soft, musical in a way the translator struggles to preserve. "We request permission to practice witnessing." He straightens, wiping grease from his hands. "I don't know what that means." "Our species," Tola says, stepping forward to stand beside Myron, their synchronization so precise it looks rehearsed, processes collective trauma through shared observation. We witness another being whose emotional state can stabilize our empathic fields. Without this, they trail off, glance at Myron. "We fragment," Myron finishes, "not like the Threnodi. Our consciousness remains singular, but we lose the ability to distinguish between our emotions and others. We drown in collective grief." He sets down his tools. "And you want to witness me?" "Yes, if you permit." "Why me?" They exchange a look, something passing between them that he cannot read. "Because you continue," Myron says simply. "Your emotional state remains bounded, contained, not absent, but regulated in ways our species never developed. Your presence creates space we can breathe inside. He should refuse. He has work, always work. Systems that will fail without his attention. But he sees the desperation in their large eyes, the slight tremor in Tolus's hands, and he understands that what they ask costs him nothing except presence. He has that to give, even if little else. "Okay," he says, "what do I do?" "Continue your work," Myron says. "We simply need proximity." They position themselves within arm's reach while he returns to the coolant pump, their breathing audible in the quiet bay, their attention a palpable thing against his skin. He tries to work normally, but awareness of being observed makes every movement self-conscious. He forces himself to focus on the pump, on the knock that indicates bearing wear, on the careful disassembly required to replace components without damaging housing. Minutes pass. His awareness of them fades into the background, absorbed by the work's demands. He removes the housing, exposes the bearing assembly, sees the problem, microfractures in the ceramic, stress damage from prolonged operation. He makes notes, pulls replacement parts from the supply locker, begins the rebuild. Myron's hand closes around his wrist. The touch is light, not restraining, just contact. He freezes, pulse jumping under their fingers. Myron's eyes are closed. Tolus moves closer, their hand finding his shoulder, skin to skin where his suit seals open at the neck. He feels their pulses through the contact points, rapid compared to his, fluttering like bird hearts. "Your rhythm," Myron whispers. "May we?" He nods, not trusting his voice. They breathe with him. He feels it happening, their respiratory rates gradually matching his, their pulses slowing to sync with the steady beat Myron feels through his wrist. The intimacy is profound and strange. Not sexual, though his body responds to touch the way bodies do, heat gathering under his skin, awareness sharpening. This is something else. They are using him as an anchor, a baseline, stabilizing themselves against his nervous system's steady refusal to panic. He has become function again, but this feels different than fixing pumps or sealing fractures. This requires nothing but presence, but being exactly what he is, and in that requirement he finds an unexpected gift, permission to simply be, without performance, without the need to do anything except exist and allow himself to be felt. They stay like that for 20 minutes, their breathing synchronized, their pulses finding rhythm together, until Tolas finally releases his shoulder and steps back. Myron's fingers slide away from his wrist slowly, reluctantly. "Thank you," Myron says. He wants to tell them they do not need to thank him, that he gave nothing. But he sees the clarity that has returned to their eyes, the way they stand straighter, and he understands that presence is not nothing, that being witnessed is a kind of labor he has never acknowledged. "Anytime," he says, and means it. They leave. He returns to the pump. His hands shake slightly, not exhaustion this time, but something else, some response to being touched with intention, with need, with a hunger that asks nothing except that he remain exactly himself. He counts his breaths until the shaking stops. Crystalis implements the new medical protocol at the start of week 12. It arrives in the daily briefing as a formal mandate. All crew experiencing fragmentation symptoms are required to maintain proximity to baseline stable individuals during work periods. The language is clinical, bureaucratic, designed to obscure what it actually demands, that he, the only human aboard, the only one whose species apparently lacks an evolutionary off-switch for trauma, must now serve as emotional ballast for 43 others who are slowly coming apart. He reads the protocol in his quarters, standing in the narrow space between bunk and wall, feeling the weight of it settle across his shoulders like a physical thing. The briefing does not use words like require or force, but the implication is clear. His presence keeps them functional. His refusal would be a choice to let them fragment, to let the crew dissolve into biological chaos while they wait for rescue that might never come. He thinks about refusing anyway. The thought lasts perhaps 3 seconds before habit asserts itself, the same habit that woke him at 05:45 every morning for 7 months, that kept him working through exhaustion, that sealed fractures and tended plants and maintained systems because someone had to. Because if he stopped, everything stopped. He reports to the observation deck for the daily briefing. The crew has gathered, those who can still gather, their bodies arranged in species clusters. The Threnodi huddle together, segments misaligned, a visible argument written in posture. The Caliph stand apart, their empathic fields too raw for close contact with others. The Senhari remain in their environmental suits, pheromones clouding the water that sustains them, the chemical signals of reproductive shutdown. The Valorians barely move, their crystal matrices dimmed, consciousness withdrawn into whatever hibernation their biology demands. Crystalis delivers the briefing, voice flat, translated into something approximating authority. The protocol is mandatory. The rotation assigns proximity windows. He will work his regular maintenance schedule. Others will work alongside him, witnessing, stabilizing, surviving. No one asks if he agrees. His agreement is assumed, has always been assumed, because he is the one who does not stop, who does not fragment, who keeps going regardless of cost. He is function made flesh. The assignments begin immediately. Velis shadows him to the hydroponics bay, her segments jerking through the doorway, neural centers fighting over whether entering constitutes progress or surrender. He works among the algae tanks while she stands 3 meters away, breathing, just breathing, her carapace slowly aligning as his presence does, whatever it does, to stabilize fragmenting minds. Sesith joins him in the water reclamation system, her body pressed close in the narrow spaces between pipes, ostensibly helping but mostly just existing near him, her temperature rising until the heat coming off her exceeds the ambient temperature by degrees he can feel against his skin. She does not speak. Neither does he. The work provides excuse enough for proximity, and beneath the work something else pulses. Need, desire, the blurred boundary between biological imperative and want. Mirren and Tolas maintain their witnessing during his engineering shifts, their touches becoming routine, expected. Wrists and shoulders and the back of his neck where their fingers rest, feeling his pulse, his breath, his steady refusal to collapse. He grows accustomed to working with hands on him, to the weight of their need translated through skin contact, to being the thing that stands between coherence and dissolution. Days pass, weeks, the touching increases. Not just the assigned witnesses, but others, seeking proximity in corridors, in the mess hall, positioning themselves close enough to feel his body heat, to hear his breathing, to observe the steady function of a nervous system that apparently lacks whatever mechanism evolution gave their species for surrendering to crisis. He feels himself becoming less person and more resource, renewable, constant, endlessly available. The distinction between Daniel Kerr and what Daniel Kerr provides begins to blur. He wakes to find Sesith in his quarters, body curved against the wall, breathing synchronized to his sleeping rhythm. He does not ask her to leave. The isolation has been eating at him too, and her presence, strange and alien and needed, fills spaces he did not know were empty. Sesith sleeps beside him now. Not every night, but often enough that he has stopped being surprised when he wakes to find her there, carapace segments rising and falling with breaths that whisper against his skin. She positions herself along the wall, where heat from the environmental systems gathers, her biology craving warmth his own produces naturally. Sometimes he wakes to find her manipulators tracing patterns in the air above him, mapping something invisible, his breath maybe, or the electromagnetic signature of his nervous system. He lies still and lets her observe, understanding that this is what witnessing means, being seen completely, without privacy, without the protection of walls. One night he wakes to her touch on his face. Her fingers rest against his jaw, cool compared to his skin, trembling slightly. His pulse jumps. She feels it, he knows. The spike of awareness, the body's involuntary response to contact. Her thumb slides to his throat, finding the rapid beat there, and she makes a sound the translator does not render, some vocalization that bypasses language. "You were dreaming," she says, voice layered with harmonics that make his skin tighten. "Your rhythm changed, became irregular." He was dreaming. He does not remember about what. Only the sensation of falling, of reaching for something that dissolved under his hands. "I'm awake now." Yes, but she does not remove her touch, her fingers spread against his throat, feeling the pulse slow as consciousness settles, the nightmare fading. "Your species fascinates me. You contain such chaos internally, but it never reaches your surface." He could move away. Should, probably. But something about the darkness, the intimacy of being touched while vulnerable, keeps him still. "We're good at hiding." No. Her other manipulator rises, touches his chest where his heart beats steady despite everything. Not hiding. Containing. Carrying chaos without letting it fragment you. "I do not understand how." "Practice," he says, and hears the bitterness in his own voice, surprising himself. Lots of practice. Her touch changes, becomes something more than observation. Her fingers press against his chest with intention, feeling the heat of him, the muscle beneath skin, the architecture of a body that refuses to quit. He feels his breathing deepen, his awareness narrowing to the points of contact between them. Alien biology and human need and need, the blurred space where witnessing becomes something else. "Sesith, I know," she says. "I know this is not appropriate, but I do not care about appropriate. I am fragmenting, Daniel. Slowly. Despite proximity to you, despite witnessing, my segments argue. They want to surrender. They say continuing serves no purpose, and the only time they quiet, the only time I feel whole, is when I am close enough to you to feel your heat." The confession lands between them, raw and honest. He should maintain boundaries, should remember his function, should not complicate survival with whatever this is becoming. But he is tired, so tired, of being only function. Tired of carrying everyone's need without acknowledging his own. He reaches up, finds her manipulator on his chest, covers it with his hand. The contact makes her go absolutely still, breathing stopped, body frozen. He feels the heat pouring off her, the rapid flutter of organs visible through translucent carapace, the wanting written in biology he only half understands. "Stay," he says. "If it helps, stay." She exhales, shuddering. Her body shifts closer, carapace segments pressing against his side, her temperature rising until lying beside her feels like lying beside a furnace. He should move, give himself space to cool, but instead he turns slightly, facing her, and her manipulators find his face in the darkness. His throat, his shoulders, touching him with a hunger that has nothing to do with stabilization and everything to do with being two beings alone in crisis who have forgotten how not to need. They do not speak. They breathe together, her fingers mapping the geography of his body, his hands eventually rising to touch the smooth planes of her carapace, feeling the warmth beneath, the alien architecture of her, until exhaustion pulls him under and sleep comes with her body curved against his. Their rhythms synchronized, their boundaries dissolved. The rescue window updates. 6 weeks becomes 8. Some complication with fuel allocation, with jump routes, with priorities that matter more than 43 researchers stranded around dying stars. Crystalis delivers the news during morning briefing, voice flat, already defeated. The crew receives it in silence. He watches them break a little more. Velis stops eating. Her segments have begun operating independently now, each making different choices, her body literally arguing with itself about whether survival justifies effort. The Valorians dim further, their crystalline structures developing fractures that spiderweb across their bodies, beautiful and terrible. 2 of the Senhari have entered full reproductive dormancy, their suits clouded with pheromones that signal species-level surrender. Myron and Tolus cling to him during his shifts, their touches becoming desperate, fingers pressing hard enough to bruise as they try to anchor themselves against empathic feedback that threatens to drown them. He feels their terror through skin contact, their nervous systems broadcasting distress his own absorbs and contains, and he wonders how much fear one person can hold before it becomes his own. Sessith fragments. He finds her in the biology lab during night cycle. Her body sprawled across the floor, segments separated by centimeters, each moving independently, reaching for the others and failing to reconnect. She is conscious, he sees, each segment aware, but the coordination that makes her whole has shattered. Her eyes track him as he enters, desperate, pleading. He kneels beside her, hands hovering, uncertain where to touch, how to help. "Sessith, can you hear me?" One manipulator reaches for him, trembling, and he catches it, holds it between his hands. The touch seems to help. The segment it belongs to goes still, oriented toward him. He touches another segment with his other hand, then another, distributing his contact across as many parts of her as he can reach, his body heat spreading to them, his steady pulse something they can feel through his skin. Slowly, painfully, she begins to integrate. Segments inch toward each other, coordinating, finding alignment. It takes 20 minutes before she is whole enough to sit up, another 10 before she can stand. She leans against him, carapace pressed to his chest, breathing hard, and he feels the tremor running through her, the barely contained fragmentation threatening to tear her apart again. "I cannot," she whispers, voice breaking across harmonics. "I cannot keep doing this, waiting, hoping, fragmenting and reintegrating and fragmenting again. I am so tired, Daniel." He holds her, arms around alien biology, feeling her heat, her fear, the exhaustion that mirrors his own. "I know. Do you?" She pulls back to look at him, her eyes wet with something that might be tears if Threnody cried. "You continue. You do not stop. You do not break. How? How do you carry this?" The question he has avoided for 7 months, the question he does not want to answer because answering means acknowledging what he has spent years hiding, even from himself. But she is breaking in his arms, and lying feels like cruelty. "I don't know how to stop," he says. "I never learned. Stopping means, I don't know, failure, worthlessness, so I just keep going. Even when I should stop, even when continuing does more damage than surrender. I keep going because that's all I know how to do." She stares at him, something shifting behind her eyes, understanding or horror or recognition. That is not strength. No, it's not. Then what is it? He has no answer, or he has too many answers, none of them good. Habit, fear, the absence of any biological mechanism for graceful surrender, the terror of discovering what remains when function ends. She touches his face, fingers against his jaw, his throat, feeling the pulse that will not stop, the body that refuses to quit. You are breaking too, she says, slowly. I see it. We all see it. You fragment differently than we do, but you fragment nonetheless. He wants to deny it. But her fingers rest against his racing pulse, against skin gone cold with recognition, and lying becomes impossible. Yeah, maybe. Then stop, she says. Please, before there is nothing left of you to save. But he cannot stop, does not know how. So instead he holds her while she trembles, while her segments threaten to separate again, and they stay like that in the empty lab until morning comes and function calls him back to the work that will never end. He begins making mistakes. Small ones at first. A diagnostic skipped, a maintenance log filed late, a pressure reading misread by 0.5 percentage point. Nothing critical, nothing that threatens immediate survival. But he sees the pattern forming, the slow erosion of competence that has defined him, and he understands that Seth was right. He is breaking, just slower, just quieter, the mistakes compound. He spends 11 hours repairing a coolant leak that should have taken 6. His hands fumbling connections, muscle memory should handle automatically. He forgets to log his shifts, loses track of time, finds himself standing in corridors with no memory of how he got there. Exhaustion settles into his bones, becomes a permanent state, indistinguishable from baseline. The witnesses notice. They touch him more carefully now, as though afraid he might shatter under their fingers. Mirren asks if he needs rest. Tola suggests requesting relief from some maintenance duties. Seth watches him with eyes that see too much, that recognize the cost accumulating behind his steady pulse, beneath his contained expression. He refuses all offers of help. There is no one to take over his duties. The Threnody cannot coordinate. The Kalith cannot function without him to witness. The others lack the training, the knowledge, the stubborn human refusal to acknowledge limitations. He is the only option. So he continues. The binary stars outside grow brighter as their mutual destruction accelerates. The gravitational distortions intensify, temporal anomalies rippling through the vessel's shields, making clocks run fast, then slow, making moments stretch or compress unpredictably. Time becomes unreliable. He cannot tell anymore if he has been awake for hours or days. Seth finds him in the observation deck during what might be night cycle, standing before the viewport, watching the stars tear each other apart. She does not speak, just positions herself beside him, close enough that he feels her heat, that her presence becomes comfort he did not ask for but desperately needs. 8 weeks, he says. Maybe. Maybe, she agrees. What if they don't come? The question he has not let himself ask. The possibility that rescue might be impossible, that the coalition might decide they are not worth saving, that they might drift here until systems fail and life support runs out, and the vessel becomes a tomb orbiting dying stars. Then we die, Seth says, voice soft. Together, witnessed. He should find comfort in that. He does not. Death holds no terror for him. He has been prepared for that outcome since the accident. But the thought of continuing like this, breaking slowly, fragmenting piece by piece until nothing remains of who he was, fills him with a dread he cannot name. I'm so tired, he admits, and feels something break inside him saying it aloud, acknowledging what he has hidden for 7 months. I don't know how much longer I can do this. Her manipulators find his hand, interlace with his fingers, holding him the way he has held her, the way the Kalith hold him, the way all of them cling to each other in the darkness. Then rest, she says, for once. Let someone else carry the weight. There is no one else. There is me. He looks at her, sees the determination in her eyes, the segments holding alignment through sheer will, and he understands what she offers. To be his witness, his anchor, to provide for him what he has provided for 43 others. The role reversal should feel wrong. It feels like salvation. "I don't know how," he says. "Then I will teach you." She leads him back to his quarters, positions him on the narrow bunk and lies beside him the way she has for weeks. But different now, intentional, her body curved against his not to steal his heat, but to give hers, her manipulators resting against his chest, his throat, feeling his pulse gradually slow as permission to rest settles over him like weightlifting. "Sleep," she says. "I will watch. I will witness. I will hold the weight while you let go." He wants to refuse. Function demands he refuse. But exhaustion drags at him, and her touch carries permission he has never granted himself, and eventually, finally, he surrenders. He sleeps for 14 hours. When he wakes, Seth is still there, segments aligned, body warm against his, manipulators resting over his heart. She has not moved. She has witnessed him through the entire cycle, holding steady while he fell apart in the only way his species knows how, by stopping, briefly, by letting another being carry the weight he has hauled alone. "Thank you," he says. She tightens her grip, fingers pressing against his chest. "Do not thank me. I needed this too. Needed to give instead of take. Needed to matter beyond my fragmentation." They lie together as station time resumes its unreliable march, and he realizes that what has grown between them transcends protocol, transcends witnessing, transcends the biological imperatives that first drew them together. This is something else, something he has no name for, something that might be what other people mean when they speak of intimacy. The rescue ship's updated trajectory appears on long-range sensors. 6 weeks. Definite this time, barring catastrophic complications. The news should bring relief. Instead, it brings a strange grief, collective and unspoken, the recognition that rescue means ending, that the connections forged in crisis will dissolve when crisis ends. The crew begins preparation protocols, packing equipment, archiving data, performing the rituals of departure. But beneath the activity, he feels the resistance, the reluctance, the question no one voices. What happens to need once it is no longer necessary? Seth moves through her duties with mechanical efficiency, her segments aligned but her movements hollow, and he recognizes the pattern. She is withdrawing, already beginning the emotional separation that will be required when rescue comes, and she returns to a world where Threnodi do not sleep beside humans, where witnessing ends, where touch becomes inappropriate again. He wants to ask her not to. The impulse surprises him with its intensity, the recognition that somewhere in the long months of proximity and need and mutual witness, she has become essential to him in ways that transcend function. But asking feels selfish, feels like demanding she continue to need him, so he stays silent. Myron and Tolis maintain their witnessing during his shifts, but their touches have changed quality, become farewell, fingers memorizing his pulse as though they might never feel it again. He works with their hands on him, feeling the loss approaching, feeling something inside himself beginning to close, to return to the careful isolation he maintained before the accident forced him into intimacy he never chose. Days pass. 4 weeks. 3. The rescue ship grows from a theoretical point to a physical presence, engines decelerating, approach vector confirmed. The crew's fragmentation stabilizes, not healed but no longer worsening, held together by the proximity of rescue, by the knowledge that survival is now guaranteed rather than hoped for. He maintains systems that will only need to function for a few more weeks. The work feels different now, temporary, bounded by an endpoint that gives it new meaning. He is no longer holding back entropy indefinitely. He is simply finishing the job, carrying them across the last stretch to rescue. Seth finds him in hydroponics during his final maintenance cycle there, standing among the algae tanks he has tended for 7 months. She does not speak, just positions herself beside him, and they stand together in the humid warmth, watching the grow light cycle, remembering. "I will miss this," she says finally. "The algae? This. Us. The way we were together when everything was falling apart." He understands. He will miss it too. The intimacy that crisis permitted, the touching without justification, the witnessing that made being seen feel less like violation and more like being known. Normal life will not allow these things. Normal life will return them to appropriate distances, professional boundaries. the careful isolation that makes daily function possible. "Me too," he says. She turns to face him, manipulators rising to touch his face, his throat, the places she has touched 100 times in darkness, claiming them now in light, in full awareness of what she is taking. "I need you to know," she says, voice layered with harmonics that bypass translation and strike directly at something beneath his ribs, that you were not just function to me. You were not just the thing that kept me integrated. You were our more. The confession opens something inside him, some carefully sealed chamber where he has been storing his own need, his own wanting, all the things function demanded he ignore. "You too," he manages. "You became more." They stand close, breathing together, and he feels the future pulling them apart, feels the vessel's approach to the rescue ship like gravity drawing them toward an ending neither of them wants. Her touch on his skin carries weight. Goodbye, gratitude, recognition, perhaps love, though that word feels too small for what has grown between them in the spaces survival carved out. She leans forward, and her carapace touches his forehead, a gesture he does not understand but feels the significance of, ritual or intimacy or both. They stay like that, breathing synchronized, until the comm chimes with Crystalis's summons to the observation deck, and the moment breaks. They walk to the briefing together, her hand in his, alien fingers and human interlaced, holding on until they reach the others, and protocol demands they separate. The rescue ship docks 3 weeks later. The connection protocols are smooth, mechanical, practiced, coalition efficiency reasserting itself after 7 months of improvisational survival. The new crew arrives, fresh-faced and competent, their bodies moving with the confidence of people who have not spent months fragmenting. They assess damage, file reports, begin preparations for transferring personnel. He watches them work and feels ancient, exhausted, carved hollow by months of carrying weight they will never understand. They look at him with polite professionalism, see only another researcher to transfer, another passenger to process. They do not see what he has become, what has been taken and given, the cost accumulated in the space between heartbeats. Sesith maintains careful distance during processing, her behavior appropriate again, professional, as though the months of sleeping beside him never happened. He understands. This is how survival works after crisis ends. You pack away the intimacy that kept you whole, return it to the box labeled emergency use only, and pretend you were never that desperate, that vulnerable, that seen. The Kalith avoid his eyes during transfer procedures. Myron's hand brushes his once, accidentally, and they both flinch from the contact, the muscle memory of witnessing too strong, too raw. The new crew does not understand why they move so carefully around each other, why touch has become fraught with meaning they cannot explain. Transfer completes over 36 hours. The research vessel will be towed back to Coalition space for analysis, repair, eventual reassignment. The crew will be dispersed to new postings, new missions. The incident filed as bureaucratic footnote. 43 researchers survived 7 months quarantine due to jump drive failure, rescued with acceptable casualties, mission data preserved. He packs his quarters in 20 minutes. He owns almost nothing, a few changes of clothes, a worn copy of technical manuals he has long since memorized. Nothing else. The space he has occupied for 7 months shows no sign of his presence. Sterile walls, standard fixtures, the narrow bunk that held him and Sesith through long nights of mutual witness. Anonymous, replaceable. Sesith finds him there, standing in the empty quarters, feeling the weight of ending settle over him. She closes the door behind her, sealing them into brief privacy. "I requested transfer to the same station you are assigned to," she says without preamble. He stares at her, surprise short-circuiting the careful emotional shutdown he has been practicing. "What?" "I am not ready," she says, moving closer, her voice carrying harmonics that make his chest ache. "To pretend this did not happen. To pretend you did not save me. To pretend I did not need you in ways my biology cannot explain. I requested transfer. It was approved. We will be stationed together." "Sesith, I know this is not protocol," she interrupts. "I know attachment is discouraged, that what happened here should stay here, but I do not care. I'm choosing this. Choosing you. Choosing to continue what we began, to see what it becomes when survival is not the only thing holding us together." The confession undoes something inside him, some careful defense he built to protect himself from caring too much, from acknowledging that she has become essential, that the thought of returning to isolation to function without witness fills him with a dread worse than any he felt during fragmentation. "I don't know how to do this," he admits. "Intimacy, connection, outside of crisis." "Then we will learn," she says, and her manipulators find his face, his throat, touching him the way she has 100 times, but different now, chosen instead of necessary, wanted instead of needed. Together, if you want. He does want. The realization is simple and profound. He wants her presence, wants her witness, wants the strange alien intimacy that has grown between them to continue, to evolve, to become something beyond survival. He wants to matter to someone beyond his function. "Yes," he says, and the word feels like permission, like transformation, like the first honest choice he has made in years. She leans into him, carapace warm against his chest, breathing synchronized, and they stand together in the empty quarters that held them through crisis, feeling the future open before them, uncertain but chosen, fragile but real. The coalition station orbits a stable star, all gleaming corridors and regulated temperatures, and the hum of systems that never fail. Civilization, normalcy, the opposite of everything the quarantine vessel became. He walks the pristine hallways and feels out of place, his body still calibrated for crisis, for the constant vigilance that survival required. His assigned quarters are larger, better equipped, depressingly empty. He unpacks his few belongings, stands in the middle of the room and feels isolation settle over him like cold water. The walls do not vibrate. The air does not taste recycled. Everything works. He has nothing to fix. Sesith's quarters are 3 levels down, the assignment random according to housing protocols, but close enough that visiting requires only minutes in the lift system. She messages him the first night. "I cannot sleep. This place is too quiet." He understands. The station's silence feels oppressive after months of the vessel's constant groaning, the sounds that signaled failing systems and dying stars, and the proximity of others fragmenting nearby. Here, sound is regulated, muffled, designed to promote rest that his nervous system cannot access. He goes to her quarters. She opens the door before he knocks, as though she has been waiting, watching sensors, needing his arrival the way she needed his presence during fragmentation. Her quarters mirror his, larger, better, hollow. They stand in her doorway, uncertain suddenly, the protocols of crisis no longer available to justify proximity. The touching that was necessary aboard the vessel becomes choice here, and choice requires acknowledgement, requires admitting what they are to each other beyond survival. "I missed you," she says. "Is that strange? We saw each other 6 hours ago during debriefing, but I missed you." "Not strange," he says. "I missed you too." She steps back, inviting him inside, and he enters. The door closes behind him, sealing them into privacy that feels both intimate and terrifying. No emergency justifies this. No fragmentation crisis makes it necessary. This is simply two beings choosing proximity, choosing connection, choosing to continue what began in extremity, because they are not ready to let it end. They sit together on her bunk, closer than protocol suggests, and she takes his hand, interlacing their fingers the way she has done 100 times. The contact grounds him, makes the sterile quarters feel less empty. "I start my new assignment tomorrow," she says. "Xenobiology research, cataloging, analysis, normal work. I have engineering rotations," he says. "Maintenance, system checks. Normal work. Does normal feel wrong to you?" "Yes." They sit in silence, holding hands, feeling the strangeness of safety, of survival continuing beyond the moment rescue arrived. The station around them hums with efficient normality, and he realizes that what they need now is not fixing systems or preventing fragmentation, but learning how to exist together, when crisis does not demand it, when need becomes choice, when witness transforms into something that might be love. The weeks that follow establish new routines. He works his shifts, maintains systems that rarely fail, fills his days with function that feels hollow compared to the desperate work aboard the vessel. She catalogues specimens, analyzes data, performs research that advances knowledge but lacks the urgency that made every task vital. They find each other in the spaces between work. Meals in the commissary, coffee in the observation lounge, Evenings in one or the other's quarters just existing together, breathing synchronized, presence becoming habit. The touching continues, her manipulators finding his hand, his wrist, the back of his neck where his pulse beats steady, his hands learning the geography of her carapace, the places that make her breathing quicken, the temperature zones that signal comfort or distress. Intimacy evolves. The sensuality that threaded through crisis becomes choice, exploration, the slow discovery of how their bodies fit together when survival does not dictate contact. They learn each other deliberately now, with time to be careful, to ask permission, to discover what brings pleasure beyond the relief of not fragmenting. One night she asks him to show her how humans express intimacy. The question is clinical, curious, but underneath he hears the real question. Will you let me know you the way you know me? Will you trust me with vulnerability that goes beyond witness? He undoes the fastenings of his shirt, aware of how exposed this makes him, how rarely he has allowed anyone to see his body outside of medical necessity. She watches with those large eyes, absorbing, witnessing, and when the shirt falls away, she reaches out, manipulators tracing the architecture of his chest, his shoulders, his ribs, learning the human body the way he has learned hers. Her touch is different from human touch, cooler, more precise, but no less intimate for the difference. She maps his scars, the places work has marked him, the tension his muscles carry even in rest. "You are so warm," she says, voice soft with harmonics. "Always so warm. I did not understand before how much heat you contain." He pulls her closer, feels her carapace against his bare skin, the contrast of temperatures, alien biology and human, difference becoming intimacy. They lie together in the darkness of her quarters, learning how to be close without crisis justifying it, how to want each other beyond need. 3 months after rescue, the coalition offers him a promotion. Lead systems engineer on a frontier research vessel. Prestigious assignment, significant responsibility. The kind of position he would have accepted without thought before the accident, when function defined him, when advancement meant everything. He reads the offer in his quarters, standing in the space that has gradually accumulated signs of habitation, a plant Sesith gave him, a blanket she left behind, small markers of shared existence. The promotion would require transfer to a different station, different sector, separation measured in light years and years. Sesith finds him that evening, sees the offer displayed on his terminal, understands immediately what it means. She goes very still, her segments aligning in the way they do when she braces for pain. "You should accept," she says. "It is an excellent opportunity. I don't want it." She stares at him. "Daniel, I don't want to leave," he says, and hears his voice break on the words, all the careful control fragmenting. "I don't want to go back to being what I was before, alone, defined only by function. I don't want to lose this, lose you." "You are not defined only by function," she says, moving closer, manipulators rising to touch his face, his throat, reading the truth written in his racing pulse. "Not anymore. You are the person who held 43 others together when they were falling apart. You are the person who let me witness you, who taught me that strength includes surrender. You are the person I chose. That is who you are." The words crack something open inside him, some final defense against acknowledging what he has become, what he wants, what matters more than advancement or prestige, or the careful isolation that made existence manageable. He has spent years believing his value lay only in function, that without work to justify his presence he had no purpose. But she sees him differently, sees the person beneath the engineer, the being worthy of witness, of intimacy, of choice. "I don't know how to be that person," he admits. "Then learn," she says. "With me. Stay. Choose this. Choose us. See what we become when crisis is not the only thing holding us together." The decision should be difficult. His entire identity has been built around achievement, advancement, the steady accumulation of competence and responsibility. Refusing the promotion means refusing the path he has followed his entire adult life, means choosing connection over function, means admitting that being witnessed, being known, being loved, matters more than being useful. But standing in his quarters with Sesith's touch on his face, feeling the warmth between them that has nothing to do with temperature and everything to do with choice, with presence, with the intimacy that has grown from crisis, into something that might sustain them through normalcy, the decision is simple. "I'm staying," he says. She pulls him close, carapace warm against him, and they stand together feeling the future rearrange itself around the choice, around the recognition that what they have built matters more than prestige, more than advancement, more than the careful isolation that once felt like safety. 6 months after rescue, he stands in the observation lounge with Seth beside him, watching ships come and go against the backdrop of stable stars. The view is beautiful, peaceful, everything the binary star's destruction was not. But sometimes he finds himself missing the chaos, the urgency, the way crisis stripped away everything except what mattered. "Do you regret it?" Seth asks, reading his thoughts the way she has learned to, proximity and time teaching her the language of his silences. Staying, choosing this instead of advancement. He considers the question honestly. The months since his refusal have been quiet, routine, filled with maintenance work and shared meals and evenings learning how to be intimate when survival does not demand it. He has not saved anyone. He has not prevented catastrophe. He has simply existed alongside her, building something small and fragile and entirely ordinary. "No," he says, "I don't regret it. What do you feel?" He searches for words, finds them inadequate but tries anyway. "Before the accident, I thought my value came from what I could do, how much I could endure, how many systems I could fix. I measured myself by function, by competence, by my ability to continue when others stopped. And now? Now I understand that was never the whole truth. Yes, I am good at enduring, at continuing, at not stopping, but that is not what made me valuable to you, to Miren and Tolas, to the others. What mattered was not that I fixed things, but that I let you witness me while I did, that I allowed myself to be seen completely, that I learned eventually to receive witness as well as provide it." She leans into him, her warmth familiar now, chosen, the physical manifestation of intimacy that has become the foundation of both their lives. "You taught me that fragmentation is not failure," she says, "that needing others does not make you weak. That surrender sometimes is the only way to stay whole." They stand together, watching ships dock and depart, and he understands that this quiet existence, this chosen proximity, this daily practice of being witnessed and witnessing in return, is what he was working toward all along, even when he thought advancement and achievement mattered most. The binary stars are light years away now, their destruction continuing whether anyone observes it or not. The vessel that held them all through crisis has been repaired, reassigned, sent back into coalition service. The others have scattered to new postings, new lives, carrying their fragments forward into whatever healing or continued breaking awaits them. But he is here with her, building something that began in extremity, but has transformed into choice. Learning that endurance means not just continuing, but allowing yourself to rest, to be held, to trust another being with the weight you carry. Learning that strength includes vulnerability, that witness goes both ways, that mattering to someone beyond your function is not weakness but the most profound form of courage. Seth's manipulators find his hand, interlace with his fingers, and they stand together as the station's lights dim toward night cycle. Two beings from different worlds who found each other in crisis and chose to remain together when crisis ended, building intimacy from the ruins of fragmentation, discovering that what survives extremity sometimes becomes stronger, more essential, more real than anything crisis could destroy. The future stretches before them, uncertain and ordinary and entirely theirs. Outside the viewport, the stars burn steady and constant, witnessing them witness each other, holding the space for transformation that continues long after rescue arrives, long after the emergency ends, long after survival becomes living.